Welcome back to Lecka Bites, delicious and fruitful conversations on the world of Lecka. And I'm here today with my good friend who I never met in person, but I feel like I met you in person, Jakob, all the way from the UK, otherwise Danish, I believe.
That's right. Markus, thank you. Good to be back.
Thanks for joining us.
Nice to see you again.
Jakob Bloch, anyone out there, how can they find you on Instagram?
Instagram, Danish Ultra Runner, or LinkedIn if you're partial to slightly more of a business angle, which is Jakob Bloch.
Jakob Bloch, indeed.
That's it.
You make a big statement with that IG handle, Danish Ultra Runner. Like, you are the Danish Ultra Runner. You are the one Danish.
That's it. And you see, I've also rebranded the company, so it makes things easier. I like carry a permanent badge.
Look at you. Yeah, you're having your own merchandise now with your own name on it.
That's right.
Here we go.
Also known as a sort of a hedge fund uniform. Although sadly I don't own a hedge fund, but hey ho, I own a Chile. Who knows?
Okay,
Never too late. Yeah,
that's true. I can't keep up with all of your crazy running. You've been doing so many things. You are, of course, extremely busy as a businessman as well. That's another story. But yeah, I would like to take us through of course, you should take us through the various races you have been doing or going to do. And also dig a bit deeper, of course, guess what, on the nutrition part. Because you are going into extreme places with extreme climates. So where do we start? Which race do you want to start to talk about?
Well, I think there's one coming up which I know will excite you, and it does have a nutrition component. But we can also talk about the last race. In fact, the last race, should I say, and the one coming up have a common denominator, which is heat and desert conditions. So the one coming up is very different and very interesting for many reasons. It's you may recall last time when we spoke, I was telling you about a failed attempt at running from Salt Lake City in Utah to Las Vegas. And our vehicle broke down, and it made it impossible to complete the task. It was a relay race, may I hasten to add. But I'm going to go back for more. And this is organized by an organization known as the Speed Project. And it's probably best described as a trail running's answer to a fight club concept.
Right.
So it prides itself on having no spectators, no rules. It's not entirely true. I'll get to that. Not sanctioned in any way, shape, or form. In many ways, not actually allowed. And as the name might suggest, it's about speed, and it's about getting from point A to point B as a relay team. And you can go any route you choose, on the understanding that you don't go on freeways, highways. So the challenge coming up is in the Atacama Desert in Chile.
Wow.
It starts in a little place called Iquique, which is Chile's version of Miami, so I'm told. So it's on the coast. And it finishes in San Pedro in the Atacama Desert, some 650 kilometers away from the start point. And actually, I printed out a race profile, and that's how it starts. This is 1,000 meters. Okay, that's where we start, and it goes in the first 60 kilometers. It goes up to 4,500 meters. And
oh my god, that hurts.
I've never run at those heights before, so we're gonna have some fun with altitude. And once we get up on the plateau, then you just have the altitude to deal with, just as it's a significant altitude. And obviously the desert, what it can throw at you in the daytime, what it can throw at you at nighttime. So as I said, we can go any route. There'd be 6 of us, 3 men, 3 women, 1 pickup truck.
Always, by the way, 50-50 gender for all teams? Or is that...
That's what they call like the OG version that they're insisting on this year.
Okay.
Actually, to be truthful, our initial team was all male. So when we were then reminded of the rules, we actively went out and found. I say we. I had precious little to do with this, but we in North America and Canada, and I believe one is in Chile, but I might be wrong. We found 6 women to join us. So we've created 2 teams from our original 1 team because we have to adhere to the rules of having a 50-50 split. So yeah, so 6 people, 1 pickup truck, incredibly remote roads, mainly just populated by mining trucks. And the Atacama Desert should be brutal as it should be beautiful. When we leave, we'll fill up the mining. Oh, sorry, not the mining truck. We'll fill up the pickup, and we will fill up probably 4 huge jerry cans of fuel. And then for the next 20 hours, we're going to be taking turns to run, and there's going to be no shops, no gas station, no nothing. Hence why we need to carry our own fuel in every sense of the word.
So you're trying to cover 600 kilometers in 20 hours? No. What do you mean?
No. I think after 20 hours, I think that's when we will encounter our first gas station.
Okay. The first checkpoint, so to speak. Mm-hmm.
That's right. So yeah, as a relay concept, you have to work it out. As you saw here on this side, we're trying to formalize a little bit the segments, but it's very difficult to predict what's the optimal distance. You're also going to need a lot of flexibility because, as we'll be running for hours and hours, I think it's difficult to map out fully how that's going to go down. And obviously there's some significant altitude or ascending in the early part of the race. So yeah.
Is there like a requirement of how much every runner has to run as a minimum?
No.
No. Someone can run all of it up until the last kilometer, and then the rest can split the last kilometer.
Yeah, you could do that. Yeah.
Okay.
And I think it's and you obviously change your model as the race progresses.
Yeah.
I've done it before, and I do remember those night periods where we actually decided to go out, 2 of us with a bike, and let the rest of the team have a decent sleep. And it was myself and my Vegas friend, Keith White. We went out and said, listen, we'll see you guys in a marathon's time. So we said, we'll see you in 3.5 hours. And we ran in the middle of the night, just taking turns between riding the bike and running.
Wow.
And actually the toughest part was riding the bike, because you would just get incredibly cold, and it was sleet. And at least when you're running, you might still be wet, but at least you're warm, unlike when you're on the bike. So
yeah.
There are different ways you navigate it. And I think it's part of the attraction of it is that, you hatch a plan, you lay a plan, and we'll get to your nutrition part in a minute.
Yeah.
But you also then have to improvise, which I think is what attracts me to some of these challenges, is that is testing your agility as well as your endurance, is testing your mental strength, is testing your ability as a teammate. For me, trail running is a solo pursuit. This is the only time I actually get to try it as a team, and we've had a couple of teams sessions with the team where we're trying to iron out how we can optimize our efforts, even down to what foods are we going to have, how can we look after runners when we're swapping over, right down to massage, medication, and of course refueling, nutrition, and so on, at a time when you just come off a run, you're not thinking straight, which is also why sometimes it's good to have a crew waiting for you at a depot. My crew is going to be in the pickup, so as much as we can do whilst we're in quite cramped conditions. So it's proper type 2 fun, I would describe it as. Yeah. Okay, so
I'm just. Do you know the movie Mad Max?
Yeah.
And I just imagine you on these desert trucks driving through the desert. Like the Mad Max crew. It's like this. Yeah, it's like having lots of fun. or
Yeah,
also
it
of
should
course
be good.
suffering. Yeah.
Yeah, it should be very
So
good.
what's the climate going to be like? I mean, what's the temperatures and humidity and so on?
I think it's I wouldn't imagine humidity is such an issue. I mean, I think it's
Yeah.
a it's a desert condition after all. But I mean the challenge with deserts is obviously you have such an enormous range of temperatures from daytime to nighttime. So to the point that I think we have to bring pretty warm clothes for the night. I think the terrain is anything from road to fairly gnarly trail conditions. So, when we've had briefings with the race organizer, it's emphasized that we have to ensure that we have a lot of equipment to deal with cars getting stuck in muddy conditions and so on. So it's definitely not a place that I would be bringing my super shoes. That's not the pace we're going. I think it's a lot of miles to cover, and as I said, partly trail, part sand, and some tarmac. And yeah, that's
And no snow this time, right? I mean, I think last time you had some issues there. Yeah.
yeah, definite issues there.
Yeah. Oh
So
my
yeah,
God.
it's very much looking forward to that. And yeah, maybe we should.
How is going to be your fueling strategy?
Well, I saw some of the content in our WhatsApp group, and obviously they are. I mean, they're fairly seasoned runners, trail runners, and endurance runners, and so finding something that works with everyone's not only palate but also food tolerance. 6 people is not easy, but I think we've arrived at some sort of protein rice cake concoction. At least everybody can sign up to. I personally think that we're going to need for stuff like this. I think you need stuff that caters for your nutritional needs, but I think you also need stuff that caters for your mental happiness.
Right.
Something you can look forward to.
Yeah. Like a
I
treat.
think yeah, otherwise, I mean, when I've been running in deserts before and trying to do it all on powders, it's miserable enough as it is, those challenges. And those little moments of joy, which it doesn't actually necessarily have to be easy and convenient. Sometimes the whole occasion of creating a meal can also be a helpful distraction and make the meal times a bit of an occasion, which can be mentally for me quite stimulating.
So what
So maybe
how does a treat for you look like? Like what's a treat for you? A Black Forest cake or what is it?
well. We're also a little bit at the mercy of what supermarkets are going to be in Iquique. Yeah, so you have to, when in Rome and all that. You have to be ready to be a bit flexible. But if there's something essential and it's not too cumbersome to bring along, of course, everybody can bring their treats. I think you got to bear in mind 6 people, normal size pickup, which is one of those pickup trucks that will have back seats. But 5 people, one is out there running, but it's still, if you have 5 grown-ups in a car like that, plus all your organization, and then if you come with a basket of your preferred food, I think it has to be a happy compromise between something that is easy accessible, because I also know how I'm not. I tend to I can struggle a little bit with being completely compass mentum when you exhausted in a trail race like that. Even the most obviously placed treat, I can overlook it and make bad decisions. So it's about finding a happy medium. But generally speaking, when I'm really up against it, it tends to be you very quickly tend to get focused on really salty food, which I think is also a huge clue as to what it is that your body is craving.
Yeah.
So I brought some gels. I want to talk to you about gels because I know that you've recently launched the series, and there's only so much you can do on gels. I think these are great for half a marathon or a full marathon or maybe a shortish ultra, but just loading yourself up with gels I want to see when I really push myself hard, I want to sort of hit 100 grams of carbs per hour. That's 4 of these boys. Yeah. And these are fairly heavily stacked in that respect, but it's still that's quite a lot, and some would even say you should try and aspire to load on even more than that. So yeah, so I think it's a good question, but I think it's when I'm really up against that, as I said, it's salty stuff that I very quickly revert to. Which also, when you go on a trail run in Europe, you find that it's salty stuff they put out, even if there's watermelon there, it's full of salt on it, just to make sure that you get what you need in that respect.
Yeah, like cheese and salami and all the soups, and I think those are wonderful. From our 4 or 5 onwards, I reduce my sweet intake and I increase my salty savory intake quite a bit, so it starts changing.
So I was curious about if we can just turn the tables a bit on your Lecka gel, because obviously I've tried your bars for better and for worse, because I think it's a nice product. I've also said to you that I've struggled to consume it when I run fast, but then I showed you when I did the Tour de Mont Blanc, I was enjoying talking into some of your bars during coffee breaks on Middle Mountain, so horses for courses and all that. But I was struggling with the I think with the density of the fruit bars. I don't think that's a Lecka issue. I think it's a general issue that I'm struggling to consume them when you're running fast. And then I saw you did the 2 things. You did smaller bite-size bars, which I think is interesting, and then you've done the gel, and maybe you've done other things that you could bring into the conversation. But let's talk about the gels. What can you tell me?
Wow. All right. See, I told you at the beginning that we might have a different flow this time. So here we go. I didn't expect that either. I'm happy to talk about my own company, of course. The Lecka Bites, we're calling them now Energy Bites. They're a 20-gram version of energy bar. They're kind of in response to increase in demand, especially on the corporate and hotel and hospitality industry.
Okay.
Where we just see, especially in Asia, 40-gram energy bars actually quite a lot. And so in terms of calories, so having a 20-gram version of it is just a very nice, convenient, healthy snack, also for the family as well. It's not our key item. We're not talking about it too much on social media, for example. It's just something that we have in store, and especially for the B2B clients, very interesting.
Okay.
The gel, having said that, now that I'm in America and in California and I'm expanding the business here, let's see how that goes. I can also see the pantry business being a big one there, for example. Who knows? But the gel is, of course, a very natural extension from, as you said, solid energy bar to a more liquid version of the energy bar, because guess what? In Vietnam, we have all these amazing fruits, whether they are dried fruits, which is good for the energy bar, or whether they are, in this case, pureed version of the fruits, good for the energy gel. And it was a very easy call to just use the Vietnamese fruits for the gel and come up with something that we can leverage from the farms next door. The passion fruit, the bananas, they come from the farm within a 5-hour drive from the factory, even less most of the time. So it takes 18 hours from farm to packaged product. Right?
Cool.
So that's a pretty cool concept. That's on the taste and on the, I guess, ingredients front. To the point of being sweet, there are 2 options to get calories. One of them is through carbohydrate. Other one is through fat, right?
Yeah.
And protein is another one, but not optimal for during exercise. So we, in this case, with the fruits, of course, we need carbohydrates. So one of our gels has the passion fruit flavor, has 25 grams of carbohydrates made up from the passion fruit puree, the brown rice syrup. Good. Yeah. It's a great product for, as you said, for anything hiking, for short distance, and for the first few hours of trail run, ultra run. Having said that, one of my good friends, Ned Phillips, he just finished the Singapore Backyard Ultra. He did 180 kilometers. He had 50 Lecka gels in that time. Man. So he loves it. He has set a new world record of Lecka gels, 50. He has a very sweet tooth, though, and so he's really gulping them down.
Yeah.
When I was at UTMB this year, it was very consistent to hear literally from everyone having stomach problems after hour 5 and 6. And I start to wonder, this is really an open conversation now, if the intake of the so perceived sweet gel-like food might cause stomach issues quite soon now.
Well, I saw that Morton have just launched a new product. Maybe that's also timely. I don't know if you've seen it. It's almost a biscuit. which has like it looked like rice and rice and granola or whatever, but it had quite a large carb density. Because I think it's a good point. I think the issue that's often not talked about enough, which is odd really, because it's certainly in the manufacturer's interest to get this into the buying habit or into the runner's mindset, and that is, unless that you're training your system consistently to take on this fuel, if you just use it for race day, you're going to fail. And I think because initially you look at these products, there's such a fear of sugars, and maybe there's a cost element to it as well. I mean, I get a sweet, excuse the pun, deal with X Endurance on these, but otherwise it could cost you a fair bit. But if you're gonna consume 4 of these an hour on any race, I mean, you think of being out there for 4 hours, 5 hours, and you're on that number. That's an enormous amount of gel you're taking in, and unless that you've primed your system, to cope with that, you're going to get sick. You have to train it.
So 2 points to this. One is, how energy bars became or were initially a sport item in the 1990s, in 2000s, with Cliff Bar, Power Bar being the OG, of course.
Yeah.
They were in this high extreme world, and then the last 20 years they became more mainstream. So you can find them now in Whole Foods or many other discounters and retailers and whatnot. I have a feeling that we see something similar with gels happening. So that gels started as an item in the extreme sports, and now gels are becoming more natural gels. Are becoming more mainstream. Our Lecka gel, the feedback I'm getting is, I was between meetings, I just took a gel. It was great. Yeah.
Oh,
so
okay.
Maybe not necessarily the mountain version of the world, because they have pure glucose and fructose. But what we offer with our fruity puree basically is like baby food on steroids, I call it, right? You have an option that is less solid like a bar, more liquid. And as people are all about convenience these days, or always have been, but in this case, so the gel I also see something that becomes more mainstream soon. So already in Vietnam, we're selling the gel in grocery stores now, just like next to the energy bars, just as a product. So
what about salt content? What's your? So
we have depending on the fruit, of course, but an average between 200 to 400 milligrams of electrolytes per gel.
Okay. 204. Let me see how that measure up with this one.
But as gels are getting more mainstream, that's my second point. What is happening on the top, on the extreme sport again? Man, I think that's where rice cakes are coming. I think it's more rice-based products as well. So I'm just throwing one out here, but I'm going to start researching next year how to make a rice gel. How to make something maybe not so solid still, I think liquid-ish, but much more on the starchy side of things. So how do you use the rice, in this case, brown rice, to create something that is probably still a bit sweet, because it still needs some carbohydrates, but less sweet and more savory and salty, of course.
Yeah, I think you need to get your salt numbers up, and I think that's obviously where the balance between sweet and salt can be the challenge, is to find something where you can create something that's a vehicle for as much sugar and salt as you can possibly squeeze in there, and is still vaguely edible. I think that's the thing. And then ultimately we all have our own personal preferences. I
think the salt conversation is fairly easy to be adjusted and personalized via the water intake. Yeah. So what we see happening is, in general, that people say, I actually don't take more gels, I take more powder. Yeah. And I also can tell you that we're working, and by the end of the year, we're going to have our own hydration powder coming out, where it's actually a no sweet version and a no flavored version, because I'm personally sick of all these flavors, and I just want something that is just a very neutral flavored, unflavored powder. Yeah. No watermelon or no, I don't know, berry mix or whatnot. I just want to drink my water and will get carbohydrates and electrolytes at the same time. So that's something we're doing pretty much anti-Lecka, because Lecka is all about fruits and tropical stuff. That's kind of the opposite end, where we say this pure functionality, no flavor, no fruits. It's just carbohydrates and electrolytes, and you can take it along your gel. So if you want to have your almost like your treat, which mentioned earlier, have a Lecka, and if you want functionality, have your powder.
Fine. Okay, well, we've given your products a lot of time here. Is there any more questions for me, Markus?
Yeah, sorry.
You feel
yeah, you asked, so you got the answers. So you also had other races in the Sahara. I was curious about that.
Yeah, well, that was a 1-day race, 50 kilometers. It was the little sister of the Ultra Mirage. They do a 100K version and a 50K version. Organized by a good friend of mine, incidentally also ran Marathon des Sables the same year as I did. We didn't know each other at the time, but that was in 2016. And he is Tunisian, and he's also a banker in London, a climate banker. And he came away from that race in 2016 feeling that, well, the Sahara Desert stretches across a few African countries. We ran the Marathon des Sables in Morocco. And he decided to go away and come up with his own race in the Sahara, but from the Tunisian side as a 1-day event. And that's been going now for about 8 years. And this year I managed to get down there and join him. And it was.
Is there any issue with like desert sand in your breathing system? Because I mean, of course, the gear and so on, but I was wondering about like nostrils and mouth. And so
I think it's there's a huge difference between my experience of the Sahara Desert in Morocco and the bit of the Sahara Desert that I got to experience in Tunisia. I think it's the sand that I experienced during MDS Marathon des Sables was much finer. It was almost a reddish sand. We ran past some redundant lead mines during a sandstorm on day one, which meant that we were pretty much covered in like a brown grime from pretty much day one. So yeah, it does get in everywhere. And I remember the first night, you wake up in the middle of the night and you get you just get such a reality check when you realize that you are sleeping under a rug held up by a couple of branches, it seems, and the sandstorm just flies straight through the tent, and your mouth is full of your mouth and nose and sleeping bags is full of sand, and that's when you realize what it is you got yourself in for. So yes, there's a dramatic difference in the two experiences. Turning up on a start line in Tunisia, knowing that by this afternoon I'll be done and I'll be back by the pool ordering myself a pizza and a beer. In Marathon des Sables, you'll be leaving camp that morning. They'll be setting up camp anywhere between 40 to 80 kilometers away, and you'll be reaching that camp and you'll be going to your designated bivouac. Do whatever you can by way of self-management to get yourself ready, get your feet ready, get your body ready, get your head ready for the next day. And you've paid good money to be there, don't forget, so.
Yeah, you pay for it.
So it's very different.
You seem to like desert races, huh? So is it?
I've realized that I'm for a Nordic lad. I'm built for desert racing, man.
Yeah.
And you know what? I didn't know that. I don't think anybody knows until you've tried it. But you can try. You can expose yourself to running in a heat chamber, which I did at Southampton University prior to the event, to get a sense of how much you sweat. You can take it a step further. You can actually analyze your sweat. There are firms that will do that, so you know exactly what you lose. At least you know what you lose when you're running in a heat chamber in Southampton. Then you can argue whether that's consistent with the how you're going to sweat and what your sweat is made up of when you're running the real thing. But at least it gives you a flavor of the sheer volumes. Okay. And I did it with a friend of mine, and we had dramatically different reactions to the heat. So I would sweat a clean 3 liters an hour.
Wow.
Yeah, and my friend would sweat half of that. So
what a crazy difference, yeah.
Yeah, but you got to bear in mind that it's an advantage to be able to sweat a lot in the desert. It helps cool you down, but also gives you a clue as to what you need to replenish when you run in places like that.
Yeah,
and it's a very crude way they measure this. I mean, they you literally you strip and they weigh you, and then you run. You're allowed to put your clothes on for this particular part, although they do keep a thermometer up your behind whilst you're running, so it's not necessarily the most pleasant experience. But then at least they will track your internal temperature while you run. Then you run for an hour, and then they take you off the treadmill and they weigh you again. And whatever the difference in weight is the liquid you've lost.
Yeah.
And probably the biggest wake up call there is that you need to understand what you lose with that sweat, and that's predominantly salt. Yeah, I mean you cannot replenish 3 hours of 3 liters of water. You can try, but it's gonna go straight through you. So your body is not absorbing all the water you try and replenish, and drinking 3 liters an hour whilst you're running is not going to happen either.
Wow.
It'll be too tough for your stomach. But it gives you an idea what nutrients you're losing when you run in awkward places like that. So unless you try it, you won't know. But it's part of the fun.
Yeah, maybe in your previous life you were like a desert nomad. Who knows? And that got carried into your now life.
But it is quite interesting, isn't it? I mean, the last one I was standing on so I was running this one in Tunisia, and and I can slide in a humble brag here. I was top 10. I love that term. I was actually 10th, but I can say I'm top 10. Yeah, but all the others, I think, bar one French guy, they're all Africans. So Algeria, Tunisia, Moroccan, and then there was this random Nordic guy that was a foot higher than the rest of the guys. It's just fun, isn't it? And I think it's you just never know. You just won't know until you've actually put yourself in harm's way how you're going to react to this.
Yeah.
And I have found that I much prefer running in heat to running in cold. When it comes to heat, I much prefer dry heat to high humidity. But generally, I think biomechanically, my body prefers to move in warm conditions. So it's not so. I don't run a lot in England for those reasons. I don't run. There are some great races in the UK. Some great races in Wales. A boggy, cold, rainy. No, I'm not interested. And I've got really sensitive ankles that are very prone to rolling. So the idea of negotiating the boggy conditions in Ireland or Wales or England, give me a June in Africa any day of the week.
Look at you. Amazing. Any desert race for next year already planned?
No, actually, there's remarkably little planned for next year as it stands. I've got a few things on the wish list. I think you always do, but actually nothing in the desert as yet. Early days. That might well change.
It's only October, so
exactly.
Let's see what you're going to come up with next week.
No, there's always tempting races out in. I mean, you know Southeast Asia well. I mean, I'm always tempted. The ones in Vietnam and Cambodia, and it ties in nicely with the fact that we have a business out in Singapore. So I've got reasons to be out there anyway, and then you can stick on a cheeky stopover in one of those locations, either at the tail end of your business.
Rinjani race. Have you done that one? The Rinjani on Lombok. That's volcanic, but also slightly desert condition with a lot of ash sand on the way up, on the way down. So it's the toughest race in Asia, people say.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah.
No, that's cool.
Just planting a seed here for you now.
Thank you. I appreciate it. That's what the community is all about. Yeah, and listen, I'm happy to reconnect on the other side of the Atacama experience, and super happy to compare notes on fueling. And obviously, wish you all the best with the not only the new projects with the gels, but also your ideas of taking it a step further. I think you're onto something, and on behalf of us trail runners, we always value fresh ideas coming to the table.
Yeah, thanks, Jakob. That means a lot. We're pushing the boundaries next year for sure. We have to establish a base, and then we can take it from there.
Good man. Yeah. Super. Well, listen, let's call it a wrap. I appreciate your time and the initiative, and we stay in touch.
For sure.
All the best.
Thanks so much.